Okay, good morning. I have to have my iced tea. I'm a tea drinker. It probably comes back from being half Nigerian. Many of you might know Nigeria was a British colony, so we drink tea, typically tea with milk, like the Queen's tea, but I'm doing iced tea today. So I'm hoping you're enjoying coffee or tea, whatever brings you joy in the morning. Again, my name is Kemi, Akinsanya-Rose, Chief Operating Officer for Cambium. I'm really delighted to be here. Before I get started, I actually wanted to step back and give a ton of gratitude to the planning committee that I talked to yesterday very briefly, our photographers, all of our AV team, which is really Jonathan Heredia. And I know there's a lot of helpers that are rolling around making sure that everything that we need is right at our fingertips. So the staff at Miraval, my experience has been fantastic. So thank you to all of you that probably can't hear me, but just wanted to start off with gratitude. So today, my hope for today, after coming off of a meditation, is to give you a couple of new concepts to take to your home, to your district, or your work. And one of them is around the VUCA framework. And so I'm going to talk about what VUCA is, how it impacts perhaps your teams, and then also really talk about what I call the leadership moves or ideas that you can think about taking to not only survive in a VUCA world, but also thrive, inspire yourself, inspire others. And as I mentioned in the overview, a lot of the answers I think are within you. That comes a lot from my working with a lot of leaders and coaching. I find I used to be an executive coach, and I had a lot of coachees that would come to me, going back to Margot's presentation, really out of balance. They were just struggling, either personally or professionally, and that those rocks were not all aligned. Maybe something in their professional life was going well, but their personal life was not. One time it could be, aligned. The next moment it could be misaligned. And so I'm going to talk more about how do we think about, I would say, returning to ourselves, going back to authenticity and finding our own kind of inspiration. And we'll do some hands-on demoing. I'm sure you're wondering, like, what is this green bucket here? I'm going to have some helpers to help me with that. And then we're going to end with a closing circle. So I'm going to ask us to move around a little bit. So this is a cue to the photographers to let you know that we will be moving at the end to a closing circle where we'll have just a very short little close and appreciation. So that's where we're going. Oh yes, I forgot the little. So what's VUCA? So VUCA is a concept that was brought to me by a person that I work really closely with, Dr. Felicia Lee. She was one of my mentors as I went through our coaching program, and she owns a leadership coaching group called Campana Leadership Group. But it's actually a concept that goes way back when, some of you might be able to research this and look it up on the internet. A Harvard Business Case Review article came up with this in 2014, but I think the concept's been around for a while. And so when you think about VUCA, there's 4 letters within the VUCA acronym. The first thing is volatility. And so when I thought about VUCA, I would say 20 years ago, I might be thinking like, hey, we're living in a VUCA world maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Now I feel like we're living in a VUCA world like every day, all day. And so things like VUCA world and the concept, I think, has come really true to my heart, in my mind, because we're living in it so often, that I really felt it, I wanted to bring the concept to this space to give you a framework. So when we think about volatility, there's a lot of challenges that are unexpected. So think of this, the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows. And so, an example of that, even for me personally, was recently I was just talking to somebody at my table who's from Indianapolis, and I went to Indy 2 weeks ago. Why did I go to Indy? I went to Indy for the Olympic trials. My son has been trying to make the Olympic team for 4 years straight. And so the highs of the highs And I will say the lows of the lows. There's a lot of volatility in that level of elite competition. And he missed the Olympic team by 0.04 seconds. And so, again, I was living in a VUCA world in Indianapolis. That is personally. So professionally, I know you probably have lots of stories within your districts of the highs and the lows of the lows, where there's a lot of challenges that are unexpected, and you feel like, what's next? So that's the first part. The second, uncertainty. How many people are dealing with uncertainty in your district right now? I think at the speed dating, the Alexia and Cambium team were going to different tables, and we heard lots of uncertainty about different curriculum products being introduced, different state mandates coming down, you feeling perhaps flat-footed in terms of how to respond, and so how do you stay grounded with uncertainty? And so when you think of, that lack of the whole complete information, but people are looking to you to make a decision, right? All eyes on you to make a decision, and you are dealing with uncertainty. C, complexity. How many people are dealing with complexity? And I'm pretty sure that, I don't know about who is not dealing with complexity? Maybe that's the question, right? And I think, just so you know, all these things could be happening at once. You don't live in a VUCA world that with just one of the only you or only C. I think I would say most of us live in a VUCA world that actually is firing on all 4 cylinders, and maybe at least 2 at the same time. Et cetera. So when you think about complexity, I remember working at the New York City Department of Education, where I had 100,000, almost 90,000 teachers, about 20,000 central office people, a gazillion divisions of people trying to do, I felt, the right thing for kids and communities. But we really weren't even talking to each other. The right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, and I would say access to information was like currency. It's like whoever had access to information was golden. And so when you think about complexity, you're trying to figure out and make those connections to help your team figure out the thing, and you don't have access to the basic information, it just makes things even more complex. So that's the complexity piece. And then last of all, ambiguity. Again, I'll take a swimming analogy. Anybody that's been swimming I feel like swimming in anything right now, lake or ocean, could be murky. And I want my goggles, but my goggles won't help me get through the water if the water is brackish or murky. And so when you think about ambiguity, how do you think about being able to manage through ambiguity where, you don't really, it's kind of a build off of the complexity. It's very unclear. If I go left, what will happen? And I know a lot of our teams really struggle. Like, if I'm going down this way and you're like, follow me, take my hand, and people are like, oh my gosh, she's taking us into this water that's brackish and we don't know where we're going and we have no clue. But you, as a leader, have to deal and navigate with that. So that's the concept of VUCA in terms of the acronyms. I would just love to hear from the audience, which of these have you been experiencing in your district? And I'm gonna come down. And maybe I could have a helper, yes. Thank you. Just who would like to share? What in your district are you experiencing? A V, a U, a C, an A, or all of the above? Thank you for going first.
So we're from Arizona. And I think complexity, you need to put an exclamation point by it, because we're the first state to have universal school vouchers. They're called empowerment scholarship accounts. We also have open enrollment, where the money follows the child where they decide to attend. Wow. So it's public school money going to private education, just public schools competing for the same kids under open enrollment. And all the money is leaving our general fund to go to private schools for parents who already paid for private school tuition before. And there is not many taxes. We're a conservative state, so we feel like we're being bled dry, and it feels purposeful. So the complexity of the system that we live in, sometimes you feel powerless. So you have to focus on the kids and focus on the work and focus on what you can control. Because if you get caught up in this complexity and woe is me and there's nothing I can do about it, you do feel like you're swimming in murkiness.
Yeah. Thank you for going first. Who else? One or two other volunteers. Thank you. Yes.
Good morning. I would say mine is in uncertainty. So I live in Indianapolis, and I am a charter leader and founded a charter school, and we work in partnership with Indianapolis Public Schools. So I'm an Indianapolis Public School partner, but I'm my own LEA. And this year, we are up for renewal with Indianapolis Public Schools, but we're not up for charter renewal. So our charter renewal is at year 7. Our partnership agreement is up at year 5. And it's just always up in the air. It's based on, in the last 2 cycles, 2 schools were closed, 2 charter schools were closed, but neither of them had an opportunity to present themselves to the district before the district decided to close them. And so it's just an uncertain time. Everybody has been like, nobody's closing you guys, your data's good, and 60% of your population is ML, and nobody wants to that challenge, but it's still really uncertain times. And so we're always thinking about that. The district will be in our building on September 12th to kind of make their first decision. So, uncertainty.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. Thank you. One other person before we move on. Thanks, Jamie.
Something we've talked about is it's difficult to talk people off the ledge that you yourself are standing on. And so I think whenever I think about VUCA, it's like if you feel VUCA and you also strive to be a transparent leader, how do you give certainty to, or some level of certainty to your teams while also giving that transparency, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's probably been our greatest challenge, especially just being in central office, but that mid-level. And so how you try and kind of distill as much as you can and give that certainty and give that clarity and give that vision and that purpose. And
oh my gosh, you're stealing the slides. There's slide 5.
So I'm super excited if this is coming up because I feel like that's our greatest challenge as leaders is how you do that for your people.
Awesome, thanks, Jamie. And I want to get back. Jamie mentioned one word, or many words, but the one word that stood out to me is the feeling. When you feel the VUCA, we're going to come back to that. So speaking of the impact, volatility causes fear, risk aversion, that back to basics. Oh, let's just go simple. I remember I was talking to somebody, we were in New York City, we were recovering from Hurricane, I think Irene or Hurricane Sandy, where we had all of our schools, 1,400 schools shut down because of the weather and the hurricane, and 50 of our schools could not be brought back up because they were underwater. If anybody's familiar with the Far Rockaways, that's in Queens. It's this little tiny sliver of I would say an island that goes way out into the Atlantic Ocean. It was underwater. And so we could not open up schools. And so I remember going to a cabinet meeting and somebody saying, well, we can open up most schools. And then we had our parents that had special needs children, special education population that really were concerned about how am I going to get my kids to school, because all the quote unquote regular buses were able to operate, but all the special ed buses were not able to operate for some reason, because I think the city was just reaming from just trying to figure out how to get traffic back on the roads, how to get the tunnels cleared, and how to get the subways together. So somebody had the bright idea of, you see the little sarcasm coming out, had the bright idea of hey, you know what? We have a great idea we want to have the cabinet vote on, and we want our cabinet to vote on giving all of our special education parents and community members access to sending their kids to school in an Uber, and then we're gonna reimburse them on the back end. I was just like, what are we talking about here? Reimburse what on the back end? And by the way, do you not remember who we are, who you are? We are 90%, free and reduced lunch school system, and just the thought of that, again, what's good for kids? Obviously it didn't go through or didn't go far. However, somebody thought it was a simple solution to a very complex problem of having 80,000 buses not being able to navigate New York City. So when you think of the back to basic reaction, not response, right? Reaction, that is in volatility. Uncertainty, how many people deal with analysis paralysis where it's like, oh, let's go do another data run. And, I love data, but if somebody asks me for another analysis because they're just like, I'm just not sure, or like, we need more information, let's do another focus group, or whatever else. Complexity, that is the total blame game where you're looking to perhaps blame somebody where, there's a lot of blame I'm sure that could go around, but, you see that a lot where people lean in to the blame game when it becomes too complex. And then ambiguity is the whole foundation of trust is basically broken. When people, how many people talk about, talking about information as currency? I deal a lot with leaders that are dealing with stories being told and getting out of hand. It's like that telephone where people don't have the information, so they're making up the information, and next thing you know, it's this kind of rollerball effect of how did that even get out there? And so the ambiguity part of it just really erodes that relational trust. So we could talk a lot about VUCA and the impact, but I want to bring us back to, what can we do about it, right? And so I really want to invite us to think about how do we ground ourselves, and actually our meditation guru used the word grounding, and I was like, yes, because, my experience has been when leaders are more grounded and not off-center or like this, they are more in tune to understanding and being aware when that feeling, to Jamie's point of being in a VUCA world is coming, or you're feeling it, you go back to what is grounding you in your leadership. And so let me just actually have you folks shout out. I was going to ask somebody to help me with this, but I'm going to just do this little demonstration. So think of this bucket as a VUCA world. And the sand in this bucket is all the noise and the drama that you all might be dealing with in your district or in your work. So I just want you all to shout out, give me some examples of the noise you deal with in your district. Politics. That's one. Let's do this. What else? Oh, good one. What else? Hold on one. Rapidly changing demographics. Let's put another scoop in here. What else? Ooh, nobody's had uninformed opinions. Huh. What else? Board members. No explanation needed. Okay, I'm gonna try and make this more balanced in here, but it's still getting kind of full. What else? Pardon? Ooh, union discontent. I love a grievance. I love the collective bargaining table. What else? I got some more sand. Ooh, lack of staffing. Teacher turnover. Jonathan's gonna be mad at me. City Hall, if you're mayoral control, like New York was. Uh-oh. And so now my cup obviously is very full. And how do I ground myself in what matters most? How do I ground myself in what matters most if I'm living in a VUCA sand world? And we just had a few examples, right? I really didn't pick a small glass. I guess I could have gotten a bigger. There were some other options in the back. I was like, that's probably a little too big. But I think you get the picture is when we sit in the VUCA world and let the sand overcome us, it makes our jobs even more difficult. So my invitation here is to think about, how do you ground yourself in your VUCA world? And I wanted to introduce this concept called an EPQ. How many people have heard about an EPQ? Love it. And so I think last year at the Power Trip, I introduced this concept, and I told a little bit of a story. As I moved in my career, I found myself becoming somebody else. As I moved in my career, I'll say it again, I found myself becoming somebody else. And what I mean by that, there's a lot of psychology that talks about human development. And so when you're born as a child, you're born, guess what, I hope naked, right? You don't know if you're a boy or a girl, or you don't know your name. You start getting socialized. Who are the first people to socialize you? Your parents. Then you go to what? School. Who are the second probably people or groups to socialize you? Parents and family, grandparents. And you go to school. You start getting socialized. Maybe you start getting, somebody's buying you a toy. When I was growing up, I got quote unquote girl toys. I also got told by my grandmother in Nigeria when she saw me playing in the streets barefoot. Football, AKA soccer, she told me, girls don't play soccer, or girls don't play football. So I was being told those things, and so we have to make choices around what do you do with that information, and how does that change who you are? Because it will change who you are. And so what happens is, when you go from birth to school year to college, you're being socialized, and I'm not trying to, get all woo-woo out there or whatever else, but it's really the concept of human development in general. But then I think as female leaders, we become socialized as well when we enter the workforce, when you're told what you can, what you can't do, and we have to make decisions about do we believe that person when they told us that you can't do that because of you're a what or that or blah, 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 blah. You start perhaps believing it. And so my invitation to you right now is to really think about, is there a quality, essential positive quality, that either you've forgotten that you had, or maybe you buried it because you've been what I call masked up. And so I was masked up as a black woman in corporate America, and also moving into education. I was masked up. I was an Oscar award-winning actress because I was told I can't be the angry black woman. Don't be the angry black woman. What's wrong with you? Your face, la, la, la. It's like, wait a minute. Who am I? I woke up one day, I was like, who am I? I was resentful. I was hard. I was harsh. I was critical of myself. I was critical of my team because I let that get to me for so long, where I had to come back to myself. And so when I thought about lifting all voices, leading with authenticity, adaptability, and purpose, my invitation to you all is, when you think of your authentic self, stripping off whatever masks that you've had to carry for so long, what is your purpose? What are your qualities? So I'm going to give you a little bit of solo reflection time. There's a card on your table that I think looks like this. Well, not exactly like that. It will have a box on the left. So I want you to think about, what are the 2 or 3 essential positive qualities that either you know right now, like, this is me, or something that you buried. I'll give you an example of something I buried. I was not bold enough. I found myself being too risk averse, too overthinking everything and being fearful. And so I one day said, I want to be bolder. I want to be bold, because I was bold, but I was masking it. I wasn't using it in my work. So it could be something that you want to unmask, or something that you already know about yourself that you want to give to the world. So I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes to come up with 2 or 3 EPQs for yourself. So it looks like I have some people's eyes on me, so turn and talk to a partner and tell them what your EPQs are, and just take about 2-3 minutes each person to talk about your EPQs. So how were those conversations? Anybody want to share your EPQ that you found or refound? Who would like to share? I put some examples up here, but Kelly.
We were very similar. We were actually pretty similar. We both had caring as our first ones. And then she had visionary and I had insightful, which is interesting. And then the last one was empowering. Our biggest conversation was around sometimes when you're caring, you can sometimes take the empowering away from others. So they can often be in opposition, because if you care too much, sometimes you want to solve, and then you take away that opportunity for somebody to be empowered. So it was kind of a nice conversation.
Love it. Thank you, for Kelly. Anybody else like to share? What do they learn about themselves, or what their EPQ is? Back to table whatever.
Heidi and I were also very similar in that we have a very receptive personality, and that a lot of people like to share things with us or come to us. And that can be amazing, but can also be taking on other folks' burdens, or a lot of that energy that you have to make sure you're setting your boundaries appropriately, and communicating with them in a way that's respectful for both parties.
I love that, and I love the word energy. And so I think this well-being summit is just an amazing opportunity for renewal. I think last year, for folks that came last year, I had a talk about pay attention to your energy. And there's a lot to be said about energy transfer. How many people have been around people that are perhaps transferring positive energy, and you leave that conversation, you're like, whoo, I feel great. And then people that transfer negative energy, you know, our bodies are like clay. You're absorbing fingerprints of people talking to you, using whatever language, positive or negative, and you're taking it in. And that's something that I really believe strongly in, is paying attention to the energy transfer, not just the energy you're bringing, but also what you're receiving. I think, Linda, did you have your hand up? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to give us a little bit of a creative exit ticket for this section. And so at your tables, and trust me, people are like, I'm not an artist. It's okay, you don't need to be an artist for this. You will see some rocks at your table. You will also see a little bag with probably a marker. These markers are acrylic markers. So, but I think they're water-based, but there are some Sharpies in the midst of it here too. I try to give people lots of opportunities. What I would love for you to do is pick one EPQ that's really near and dear to your heart, and I would love for you to think about this rock as your what is your big rock that you want to take from this experience? And of course, you can paint on other rocks. Trust me, there's lots of rocks outside. But we're going to pick one. If there's extras at your table, pick 2, and write your EPQ on the rock. And color as much as you want. I'm going to give you about 3-4 minutes to pick your rocks. I wrote my EPQs up top. Here, I have my rocks, and I'm going to do a little demonstration in a second. I'll share with you some of my rocks, but this is your chance to be as creative as you like and write your EPQ rock. So if you remember my first demo, my nice sand bucket was overfilling. And then I have all my essential positive quality rocks here in terms of what's grounding my leadership. There's really no space to fit these rocks in here. I'm really out of order. I'm out of balance. And so when you think about how can you take your essential positive qualities and make them as much of a priority as possible? And I'm looking, you're like, yeah, that's the key. How do we start with being grounded? Well, we start by putting our rocks into our bowl first. So I have love, calm, harmony, gratitude, hope, and I always have to have humor. And so, when you got the politics, when you have City Hall calling you to say that the mayor wants a press conference in 2 seconds, come on over, you have collective bargaining, you might have a teacher strike, you might have, statewide tests coming up, and who knows what's happening in terms of test prep, teacher shortage. Yes, it's still flowing over, but now at least it's grounded in your rocks and your why and your essential positive quality in terms of what you're bringing to this world. And so that's what I'm hoping you remember from this conversation at your tables about like the beauty of and the power within this room. I only gave you one rock to write on. I almost guarantee that you have more than one rock, and you know it. I'm looking at you, and I think at the back, there's a back table I was speaking about in terms of, you suppressing or shrinking because somebody's telling you a story that is not necessarily true, but you're shrinking yourself because they maybe have more power or whatever else. And so my invitation to you all is making sure you come back to yourself and your authentic purpose. So thank you for playing with me with that creative aspect. But going back to VUCA, I'm going to leave you with a couple of other VUCA tips. And this is also on this takeaway at your table. I'm a big takeaway girl, so I know that when I go to conferences, I like to bring things back to all my friends at work. And so on the front of this handout is what we talked about. What does VUCA stand for? What is it? And on the back is really around what are the leadership moves that we're recommending in terms of how you can think about thriving and still inspiring in a VUCA world. But again, remembering who you are and remembering start with your rocks. So first, if you're dealing with volatility, I think somebody said vision setting. That is the go-to move here. And so, when I came into the New York City Department of Education, I took over the information technology and data team. They had the worst reputation for delivering service to our schools across the 5 boroughs of New York. And there was a lot of volatility, a lot of negative energy, et cetera. So I had to really sit back and talk about what is the vision. And it's not just me making my own vision. You all know, how do you make it as inclusive as possible and bring in the right voices to that? When we think about lifting up all voices as a theme for this program, that's something that is really, I've seen that work really well in districts, and I'm sure many of you are doing that already. And so volatility equals vision, painting a picture, creating that meaning for somebody. Like, what is your connection? Why is this important? What's your why? What's their why? And painting all the dots together. When dealing with uncertainty, uncertainty is a lot about, misinformation and not knowing what those brackish waters are going to look like. So when you're thinking about uncertainty, how many people there's a practice called backwards design or backwards planning. And so your leadership move there, we're inviting you to think about backwards planning. We're inviting you to thinking about harmonizing your skills. Do you have the right people and the right seats on the right bus? Perhaps you need to be thinking about other thought partners that might augment or build capacity when you're dealing with uncertainty. Complexity, that's no pun intended. It's pretty obvious. If things are super complex, I love the person that was talking about complexity in your district and how you just have to block out the noise and focus on, what are the 2 or 3 simple things that we can do. And a lot of times, I think people fear making all the big step forward, you're on the ledge, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to take that leap of faith, there might be a small step that you could take instead. And I think a lot of people that I've seen in districts do a lot of like iterations or pilots, or I want to do chunk the change and start small, and then you get the believers going, and then you're able to move the needle in that way as well. And then last of all, ambiguity. This is really about flexibility. And so, you know, and this goes back to piloting and iterations. So, you know, one of the things I know we were really bad at was decision-making culture. How many meetings have you been in where you're like, I don't know why I'm in this meeting. Who is the decision maker? What is the decision? Is there a decision? And so, for example, on my team, when I'm in that swirl, I call it the swirl, you know, I've also told my team members, I'm like, if you're in a meeting, well, I do say one thing that's I think is funny, but maybe people don't think it's funny. I'm like, no agenda, no attenda. No agenda, no attenda. And so, like, it doesn't need to be a formal agenda in terms of, like, 10-page, but if you can't help me understand, like, what are we trying to talk about, then I am not attending. No agenda, no attenda. But when you get to the meeting, the first question, if you're in a swirl, and I've told all my team members, please, if I come to the meeting without an agenda, if I come to the meeting without telling us, like, hey, what type of meeting are we having? Oh, we're having an awareness meeting. Oh, no decisions are being made. Okay, great. Now we can chat. If you're in the swirl, I've told my team members, please ask, what type of meeting are we having? Is this an awareness meeting or is this a decision-making meeting? Oh, decision-making meeting. Okay, well, what is the decision we need to make? And who is the decision maker? Oh, they're not here? Okay, maybe we should not have this meeting. I guarantee you that will happen. And so how do you create a routine and a practice and a discipline? Because think about all the minutes that you sit in meetings where that might be happening. If you repurpose that time, you literally could be on vacation for like 5 weeks. I mean, I'm half joking, but not really. And so when you think about ambiguity, it's the routines and the rituals, and I would say leaning in on decision-making culture and making it, you know, making decision-making inclusive, but also making it rigorous in terms of just the basics of who is the decision maker, and do we have them at this meeting? Okay, so our last conversation at your tables, I'm looking for you all to think about, we have your EPQs, your big rocks. We have the framework for VUCA. I would love for you to turn and talk with a partner at your table and pick a V, a U, a C, or a. I feel like it's like the YMCA song. YMCA, VUCA. Oh, actually could work. Pick a V, a U, a C, or A, and think about what leadership move do you want to take with you from everything you learned in the past 2 days, not just today. What leadership move do you want to take with you into next year? So I'll give you about 10 minutes, so like maybe 2 minutes of think time and jotting down in your journal there, like card journal, and then pick a partner and chat it up. I'll give you the 5-minute warning. Okay, why don't we come back to a whole group? I'd love to get 2 or 3 volunteers to tell us what letter, or not letter, yeah, what letter did you pick? VUCA. And what leadership move you're going to take into next year. Allison.
I will do so. So we actually talked a little bit about diagonal connections between these, and what I was saying was I really like the strategy of thinking about painting a vision as a compass, and what I need to do is work with my leadership team so that they understand that they are a compass, not a triptych, right? They don't need to write the directions, go 200 feet, turn left. They need to say, head in this direction, and then we need to use great decision-making frameworks, milestones, and kind of process to say when you're checking back against the compass.
Yes, love it. Compass, okay, I have to think about that. Thank you, Allison. Who else? 1 or 2 others. there and over here.
So I will say it's been a year of ambiguity when you go into a new role, but there are so many things that apply, whether you're in education, whether you're in industry, and ambiguity is like the enemy, because when people feel like there is not a clear purpose, it's like walking on ice or trying to balance. And so we've done a lot of work with Pat Lantoni and the table group, and what I love, and this is super simple, but all of your meetings can't be at 30,000 feet. If you're at 30,000 feet and then suddenly you're at 5,000 and you're doing a to-do list and then you go back to 30,000, like everybody experiences that turbulence. And so a good way for ambiguity is just labeling your meetings. This is a 30,000 foot meeting. We are just wondering and
Labeling
inventing.
your meetings.
Yes.
Okay.
We are wondering and venting, or we are like enabling and tenacity, and we have a to-do list and we're gonna get it done. We're not gonna jump back to recreating. We're just gonna get the job done now. And even setting milestones for each of those meetings so that there's a progression. You don't stay at 30,000 because that's not helpful. You're gonna lose gas. So it's been really good, but I think there's so many ways you could apply that in schools. And really, to your school leadership strategy, I wish I had had some of that work when I was in the school world. So
No, thank you for
go.
sharing. Labeling your meetings. Love it. And we have one last one over here, and we're going to go, 1, 2, right here, and then we'll go over there. Thank you.
This activity really helped me realize as an assistant superintendent how much sand in my cup is wondering what my role is at meetings, what decisions I'm supposed to be making. And so one of my intentions coming out of this is to just be more explicit in just asking that question. Whose decision is this? Am I in this meeting because this is my decision? Am I in a supportive role? Because I spin in my head a lot. There's a lot of noise about what is the expectation of me, and that ambiguity is not productive. And so this is really helpful to visualize and to just ask those explicit questions. So I'm like labeling the meeting for myself in my head in that assistant role, wanting to be supportive, but also give me something to do and I will do it.
No, I love that. Role clarity, like what is mine to do and what are others supposed to be doing? Love it. Thank you so much.
I was focusing on the uncertainty, and it seemed really simple, but make things transparent, make it plain so that it's not, the people aren't uncertain or unsure. And then really harmonizing skills. When I think of my own team, I think about how each of us have such we have similar skills, but we also have some very unique skills. And I think as I hired the team, that was what I was thinking. That I was thinking that this person will really help us do this. This person has this skill, they're gonna do that. And sometimes those skills are good, and sometimes they can be like, but then that's helpful too, though, because knowing that, that's why I still wanted that person, because they're gonna speak up or say things that are gonna make us be more thoughtful. And so I think just being really transparent about that, pointing out what our skills are and how we're going to be able to map things out and create energy to make a change. And so I like action. I'm not really I don't like to sit around and just talk about things just for the sake of talking about it. I want to do something, and my team is that way too. So we're gonna do stuff this year.
I love it. Yeah, I don't like navel-gazing meetings either. And I think you bring up a good point around talent. And that goes back to picking the right people on the right bus going to the same destination. And I think a lot of leaders, when you think about some of the DEIB work, we really are trying to hire diverse workforces and bringing people to the table. But when we get the people to the table, then it gets hard because they're so different. And then we're like, oh, well, why did we do that? It's like, well, no, now we need to figure out how we can work together across difference, because just hiring is the first step. I think inclusion is actually even harder and having that culture. So thank you for sharing. Okay, we are on our home stretch. So just to summarize what we did, we learned about what VUCA was and the impact. We learned that we can not just survive in a VUCA world, we can thrive and still inspire, and inspiration starts with us, with our own EPQs. And we should start with our EPQs and prioritize that, because there will always be VUCA sand. There'll be buckets and buckets and buckets of VUCA sand everywhere, but that's the noise that we have to just know that it exists, but what are we gonna do about it? We have to navigate that, but it starts with us, and that's your big rocks. My hope is that you can take your rock with you in your little pouch, and again, take your acrylic markers, all of them. And I want to leave us with this visual. I think this time here, my hope is that you had a chance to plant some seeds. You know, when I think of this tree, it could be whatever tree you want it to be. I picked a tree because the tree has very strong roots and are really grounding and helping the trees not just survive, but grow, sustain, etc. You know, my happy place is Costa Rica, if anybody's been to Costa Rica, and they have the beautiful guanacaste trees. They say pura vida. Pura vida, like literally, means pure life, but it's actually a saying, if you want to look it up, it's more than just pure life. So if you have a chance, look up what pura vida means. But I just love that saying because whenever I go to Costa Rica, it's a feeling I get from the culture there around, you know, being grounded, being welcoming, and knowing yourself and really believing yourself. And so I'd love for us to end in a closing circle. And the closing circle might be an oval, that's okay. I know we have chairs and tables in here, so I'm asking us to stand up. You can leave everything at your table. We're going to try and make a circle. And so within, we weave within. I'm going to be in the middle, but try and get us into a circle. And we're going to hold hands. We might need to cut it halfway through the room. I don't think we're going to make, actually, let's see. We might, right? We might. Oh, wow. This is beautiful. So I love circles. There is something to be said about circles. We can look each other in the eye. Hello, hi, 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 hi. And so I chose this closing circle just to remind us of the power within each one of you, the power within this community. And I want to just do a 1-minute close. The 1-minute close looks like just really feeling the energy in this room. I want you to close your eyes. And I chose this 1-minute closing song. It's by a group called Beautiful Chorus. They are out of ATL, Atlanta, Georgia. And so when Jonathan cues us up, I just want you to close your eyes, listen to the words, and do nothing. Just listen and feel. And I will give you the instruction, keep your eyes closed until I tell you to open them. Okay? So Jonathan, take us away.
My roots reach deeply. I am connected to the core of me. My roots reach deeply. I am connected to the core of me. My roots reach deeply. I am connected to the core of me. My roots reach deeply. I am connected to the core of me. My roots reach deeply. I am connected to the core of me. My roots
So keep your eyes closed.
reach deeply.
I'm going to
I
whisper
am connected to.
Don't worry, Marilyn. Don't panic. You're a Virgo. I'm a Libra. I'm very balanced. And so I'm going to have Marilyn pass the energy via a squeeze of a hand. And when you feel the squeeze, I want you to, when you feel the squeeze come, it's like the wave, you're going to squeeze the next person. And so, Marilyn, you can choose right or left. You don't have to tell me. And so let's pass the energy through a squeeze, and when it comes back to Marilyn, you will tell us. So keep your eyes closed, Squeeze, and let's pass the energy around the room. It's coming your way. Positive energy is coming your way. Positive energy, a squeeze is coming your way. And Marilyn, when the squeeze comes back to you, let us know. Feel the positive energy in the room. Maybe it's around. I don't know. Is it coming somewhere? How about this? Squeeze your partner's hands, pass them the energy. Let's do one big squeeze of a hand. Thank you for your time. Open your eyes. I hope you learned something. Good trooper. Thank you.